So today we are going to talk about singing with earplugs. What the hell? You might be thinking, this is quite strange. Singing is an auditory thing. Why would we need to practice with earplugs? How could this possibly be useful? The thing is, when we diminish the sense that we actually associate with singing with most, it has some really interesting psychological benefits that I'd like to share with you. Hello lovely ones! This is Livia. I'm a professional soprano, voice teacher, and the founder of Singing for Self-Care. If you like heart-based singing and health, I highly suggest you click the subscribe button because every Monday you will receive tips on your most powerful method of self-care, your voice! Because remember, you and your voice are practically magic. So when we put earplugs in, we are diminishing our auditory feedback. You can click out of the video now. I guess that's like the Captain Obvious award, right? Of course, that's why you would put earplugs in. But what's cool about this is that we are left with only very important audio information, and there's not so much in the way distracting us anymore. So things that you can still hear when you have earplugs in is your pitch. You can also hear a little bit about how the vocal folds are coming together. So whether you're kind of singing in a really breathy way like this, or conversely, you might be having a little bit too much abduction happening. We want to be somewhere in the middle, obviously, but you can still hear if that's a thing when you've got earplugs in. You can also hear if you are singing in a nasal way or not. So if some of the sound is coming through your nose or if it's all coming through your mouth. So there are important technical things that you can still hear when you have earplugs in. What you can't hear is absolutely everything else, pretty much. And that can actually be really useful in a lot of ways. So what ends up happening with a lot of singers, and I've seen this all the way from beginner students to people who are professional singers themselves, is they suffer from a thing called analysis paralysis. It's really fun to say, analysis paralysis. Anyway, what this means is when you're kind of really hyper aware to what your voice sounds like, and as you're singing, you're kind of micro listening to all of these adjustments and you're kind of changing things as you sing. The thing with that is, one, it makes it very difficult to be in the moment and practice mindful singing. And two, just in terms of the processes of your technique and things like that, it makes it very difficult to just commit and do the things. So oftentimes with singing, we're looking for full release breath. It takes a lot of courage, especially if you're singing, high notes and things like that. If you hesitate, you're not going to make it. You just have to kind of have that big leap of faith and just go for it. And if you're there kind of thinking about every tiny move you're doing and making all these micro adjustments, it's going to be very difficult for you to just release the breath and surrender to the whole experience. So when you have earplugs in and all of a sudden all of this excess auditory information is missing, you are forced to just start to go with the sensations that you're feeling in the body. You have enough things like pitch and things to go from so you're not getting lost, but you don't have anything else to distract you. You don't have anything to analyze. Which brings me to my next point, and that is, I've spoken a little bit about this in previous videos, is using singing as meditation in movement, using singing as a meditative anchor. So you can choose to do this in your usual practice routine. As I mentioned before, you can be doing your practice in a mindful way. Just say you're working on a particular exercise, you can think, okay, I'm going to make sure that my vowels are really clear in this exercise, or this phrase, I'm going to focus on being really, really legato. So basically it is a mindfulness meditation. So instead of maybe traditionally sitting and just being aware of sensations in your body, your breath, or sounds you can hear, or things you can taste, things you can smell, different senses and things like that. So you're using your practice schedule, your practice experience as meditation. Even if you don't consider yourself a singer and you're like, oh, I don't need to practice singing, I'm just interested in using the power of my voice for my own self-care practice, it's exactly the same thing. Singing, again, is a wonderful thought anchor, whether you be doing something like vocal toning, so doing diaphragmatic breathing and breathing out on a nice hum, or if you just want to connect with the breath, it's also very useful for that as well. I have come across so many beginner singing students who just get quite distressed about what their voice sounds like sometimes. They might start off as very shy students. They don't like to sing in front of people. And when they do kind of pluck up the courage to sing in front of me or family members or anything like that, they often give themselves a really, really hard time. And you know, they might make a mistake in a song and just stop entirely and be like, oh, this is terrible, I sound terrible, I made a mistake. And it makes it very difficult for them to practice because, again, they have this kind of monkey on the shoulder saying, this was wrong, this was wrong. And when you're in that mentality, it's the same thing with kind of, it's holding you back. So much about singing is this surrendering to the experience, and so much of the technique comes when you just allow yourself to just let go and release. So beginner students as well who may feel very fearful about singing and criticize themselves a lot may benefit a lot from this also, because it gets you in touch with the actual process of singing and not being so focused on the results. Another good reason why you should practice with earplugs is because you don't sound anything like what you think you sound like. So this may sound really weird, but think about if you have listened to a voice recording of yourself, say if your friend has taken a video or something like that, and you listen to it and you think, oh my God, is that what I sound like? My voice is so annoying. Like, how has no one ever mentioned to me that my voice sounds like this? There's this some sort of like disconnect in your identity because you don't associate yourself with sounding like that at all. Now, the reason why that is because when you're the instrument yourself, you get a very different feedback to what other people do. So when you're speaking, the sound, the vibrations are not only traveling out of your mouth and around the room and you're getting those reflections of sound back into your ears, but you're also getting sound coming from your mouth traveling this way. And more importantly, you're also getting, so you've got bones everywhere, right? But you have bones. Remember to subscribe for excellent information like this. But basically, your bones act as conductors, and obviously bone is a very different material than air. And what happens with the bone is that the vibrations from your voice travel through the bones and into your inner ear, and you process the sound. Now, the thing with bone is that the bass resonances in your voice, so things that sound kind of a little bit more deep and dark and chocolatey, they are easily conducted through bone. So to you, your voice sounds a lot richer and bassier than it does to other people around you in real life. So this leads on to another very good reason why you should not listen to yourself too much when you're practicing, because you know that your ears aren't the best judge of reality. So it's one of the reasons why it's more important than ever to just go with the processes of singing and concentrating purely on the technique and the journey there, rather than trying to create a particular sound of what you want your voice to sound like or what your voice should sound like. Now, a fun little exercise you can do is get two either like pieces of paper or folders, or I've just got two notebooks. And what you can do is place the books in front of your ears like this, right? So what you can do is just have a bit of a talk. You can count to 10 or something like that. And if you haven't done this before, you're going to be really surprised with what you hear. When we do this, you're hearing a lot more of the reflections of the room, the acoustics of the room. You're getting less of the spill of the sound from the front of your face coming up. You're still getting a little bit of what you hear through the bones, but this is a closer representation of what other people hear when they hear you. So you watching this video, you're like, you sound exactly the same. Yes, but to me, I sound very different. So yeah, I really recommend you give this a go, because it can be quite an eye-opening experience. Especially if you think like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and hear just how much it changes. And the last reason why it can be really great to practice with earplugs in is probably the most obvious reason, and that is to protect your ears. Now, I, especially when I was younger, didn't really care that much about my hearing. I didn't really subject them to too much, and my hearing was quite good. But I have noticed maybe in the past 2 years or so that my hearing has diminished a little bit, and I know exactly why. It is from practicing in apartments. You can often practice and not notice that you're doing damage to your ears. So I'll be singing for like 15 minutes, all is fine, all is well. But then maybe after about 20 or 25 minutes, I stop to pause and I hear tinnitus. So big ringing in my ears. Not a good sign, guys. So really be careful, especially if you don't have the luxury of having a nice big space to warm up in and practice and things like that. If you are just practicing at home and you're in a small room or something like that, you can be doing your ears damage. So that's also another really good reason to wear earplugs as well. Now, there's quite a good chance that when you start to implement this into your practice routine, you may hate it. Especially if you're one of those people who really picks apart your voice as you're singing. It's going to be a real disconnect. It will feel quite dissociating maybe. And one of the risk factors is that because you're experiencing this disconnect, you may feel you need to sing louder to compensate and try and hear yourself. So obviously that's not something we want at all, because if you're pushing your voice, you're going to get tired. You know, if you keep singing on a tired voice, it can lead to injuries. That's not what we want at all. So if this is a new experience for you, what I'd recommend is starting off with just even a 60-second meditation before you start your practice. So that's really as simple as closing your eyes and just connecting with your breath for 60 seconds. Diaphragmatic breathing, maybe something like vocal toning. So etc. So just kind of feeling what this vibration, nice smooth vibration, feels like on the way out, and just something that's very, very easy vocalizing, and just concentrating on the sensation first with easy vocalization. Then when you put your earplugs in and start doing your warm-up, then it's going to be a much easier transition to just focusing on the physical sensations of singing rather than listening. Now, the little clip at the beginning when I was kind of demonstrating what it's like to sing with earplugs in, one of the times I find it the most useful is in particularly difficult passages of music, things that you need to practice over and over and over again, and particularly things that you find a bit scary. So that may be, in my case, what I was doing then, coloratura passages. Not my favorite thing to do in the world. And yeah, things like high notes and stuff like that, that might kind of, you think, oh, this is the hard bit, and your mind starts kind of moving a million miles a second. When you do it with earplugs, because of that disassociation, there's not so much fear involved. It does become more of just a mechanical practice. It takes the scary emotions out of it, and it's just like, okay, these are the notes that I'm singing. You know, it becomes a mindfulness exercise. You're not connected to these thoughts of fear anymore. It's just very methodical. It's just an experience. So yes, if there's a part of your piece that you are absolutely terrified of, you dread it, you see it coming up on the next line and you're like, oh my God, here comes that bit that I can't stand, that's really, really scary, then I think this approach would be really useful for you. And you can, if you want, take this sensory deprivation one step further. So you could choose to do something like also blindfold yourself as well. So you may think, sensory deprivation, that doesn't actually sound very nice. Isn't that a form of torture? Technically, yes, but only for long periods of time. You may have heard of things called float tanks. I have always been desperate to try one, and I look forward to the day in my life where I get to try a float tank for the first time. But if you don't know what one is, they're a capsule, I guess you could say, filled with water and salt and things like that. It's heated to exactly body temperature. They put you in there, they seal you in, you're just floating in water. It's completely silent, it's completely dark, and you just go in there and zone out for however long. And it's said that having this sensory deprivation is really fantastic for you to get into a relaxed state. It's really fantastic support for meditation as well. So the thing is here, you obviously have a lot of your senses intact, but you are numbing them a little bit. So you're just getting rid of some of the excess distractions that can keep you from treating your singing as meditation. If you are going to practice with a blindfold and earplugs, I recommend maybe you sit down or just make sure you're in a safe place, nothing you can bump into and things like that. Obviously, be safe, sit down if you need to. So that is it for today. I hope there was some information here that may have been new to you. I understand that it might be a bit of a strange sensation to go through something where you're diminishing a sense that you feel is really, really important for singing, and these two things go together in your mind so much. So it may be a little bit strange at first, but there are a lot of really, really great benefits. So even if it's just for one practice session, I urge you, please try it out. And when you do, write to me in the comments. What did you think? Was this kind of weird? Is this something you would try again? Did you like it? Did you hate it? So thank you for your time. It was great spending a bit of time with you today. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Little baby starting YouTube channel. It'd be great to get this information out there. If you have any friends, send them a link, hit a like. Have a beautiful day, and I will see you next week. Bye.